Right. So today I'm going to discuss about the software architecture part, software architecture document, which is in context to the confluence as part of the implementation of the project, especially for the people who are working as an architect in the field of agile environment. Because whenever we are trying to understand, so whenever we try to understand the software architecture, especially from the context of technical team when we are working on. So it's always important for us to understand the software architecture review document is what something which we have to be known with. In regard to that, it's always important for us to create some confluence pages so that, especially for architect team, this implementation is something useful to provide some solution architecture for any of the application in the field of agile. We have an advantage where confluence can be connected with jira and whatever the subsequent changes and all everything can be done in this regard. So here first of all we need to update the review date, because whatever the architecture review date we have, because software architecture review date I'm talking about. So when the software architecture was reviewed, either it can be in application architecture or it can be data architecture or systems architecture, or else finally solution architecture will be prepared later on, but not in this stage. Normally we don't do it. Software architecture document followed by the review date has to be updated. So after that we need to mention the lead, project lead information has to, means who is going to review this. That lead details has to be mentioned under the project lead part. So followed by this, here we need to write down the review part, because what is the architectural diagram we are going to create. Let's say as in when we are taking a core banking application as an example I have taken, we need to mention about how this structural components has to be updated in the architectural diagram. What are the different structural components we are using, especially when we are going to create an architectural diagram. That information has to be updated in the confluence page. Followed by this, is there any kind of architectural issues we have? For example, we have seen some front-end related technologies where is an architecture issue was identified here. Okay, for example, we have identified this. So whatever the structural issues or structural issues were identified, that information has to be updated. In what way it is impacting on the business? This is where generally business impacts comes into picture, because of the front end development what we are doing, especially when we are creating an architectural issue, it might be impacted on the business, wherein whenever we are doing some unit testing and whenever you are going to debug and all everything, so that sort of impact will be there when we are working on the business. This is where generally this business impacts comes into existence. After the business impact, the next we need to update the priority. Whatever the priority do you have, that priority item has to be updated here, because normally front end written in context to the depreciated technologies and all, high level priority will be keeping, because front end development is one of the key and important element we need to be focused. So high end priority is what something which has to be defined here. Next, if there is any kind of notes to be written, right? So what are the kind of notes which is required for us to write? So we need to write down the additional information as well as the notes, whatever is required and all everything here. This is where generally architecture issues comes into picture. Architectural issue followed by the kind of business impact. What is that are we doing to do on? Next, whatever the high priority or medium or low priority items, followed by the notes, etc. All that. This is all something comes from the architectural issues which will be written here. Next, here we need to write down the stakeholders, because whatever the kind of stakeholders we have, either it can be an external stakeholder or internal stakeholders. Any stakeholders, those details has to be updated. Either it can be a lead architect, or else another stakeholder may be a solution architect. Okay, or else it can be an application architect. Right, so or else it can be an application architect, right? So something of that sort, right? So whoever the architects we have, right? So what the kind of stakeholders we are, because normally these people are internal stakeholders, I can say, right? So right? So internal stakeholders. So those details has to be updated over here. This is where generally this application architect, the kind of stakeholders and all everything has to be updated. Next is software quality attributes. Means here we need to update the software quality attributes here. Means whatever the kind of definition you are giving. For example, we are running the system wherein we are system running and as well as we are updating all the informations in this. So if you want to run the system, whenever we are working on the systems and all everything, so what kind of metrics, success metrics we are taking? Because if there is any kind of failure has taken place when we are updating all this information and all, what are the key success metrics to be followed? And is there any kind of documentation in context to the notes if there is anything of that sort that has to be updated subsequently? So this is where generally software quality attributes means how often the software quality attributes were updated. The document has to be informed and that information has to be updated under the software quality attributes here. So once software quality attributes, next we need to mention the efficiency, because software quality attributes will be defined and based on different factors. The first one is about efficiency of the project, wherein it requires some kind of resources which are required to execute the software. And at the same time, the kind of metrics we follow either in regard to the cost or etc. all that. Next, extensibility of implementing the project, wherein by replacing the software systems, the kind of versions what we have. So all these things are comes under the extensibility part. Next was functionality. Whatever the functionalities are we going to implement, especially for this project, those functionalities has to be written here. Next, integrity. Integrity means when we are going to integrate any kind of application, as far as the system designs itself is concerned, how this can be done. At the same time, we need to be focused more on the interoperability or maintainability. All these things has to be taken care of when we are working on the project. So it's not only about the maintainability, but it's always important for us to about the modifiability, because if there is any kind of changes to be made, or is there any kind of performances to be maintained or portability, all these things are comes under the software quality attributes: efficiency, extensibility, functionality, integrity, interoperability, maintainability, modifiability, performance. All these will be comes under software quality attributes. So finally, we need to write down the goal. So what kind of goal you are trying to achieve in context to the architectural design diagram you are going to maintain. So that has to be maintained here. Next, followed by this, what are the any kind of next steps to be taken? For example, any front-end improvements we are doing. So that front-end improvements has to be explained, right? So at the same time, we need to estimate how much business complexity or effort estimation will be taken to us to complete front-end improvements. For that, what kind of documentation you are going to give, right? So if there is any kind of document we prepare, the document link will be forwarded, followed by this target date. Because whenever we are working on the agile part, there is some release planning has to be made. Based on the release planning, implementation will be taken place further. This is where generally this next steps and all everything work comes into existence. This is what and how generally a software architectural design document is what something will be prepared by an architect team. So as far as using this confluence and all, this software design document, architectural design document for the purpose of review will be prepared and it will be published so that the team will be knowing about what is the architecture is all about and how this can be reviewed and what are the action items to be taken to move and moving on to the next level will be decided based on this. This is all about this video. If you have any questions, if you have any queries, please reach out to the contact details which will be posted in below to this video. Thank you.